Hello, this is Dr. Jacqueline with DTP Leadership Group, and this is Hot Topic Bold Talk. This is podcast 123. And what I wanted to talk with y'all about the tremendous resistance that's going on against Trump and Musk and this non-existent Republican-controlled Congress we have that is taking no position. So what I've titled this podcast tonight is Exposing the Deception, Trump and Musk Illegal Actions and Resistance that is Fighting Back. I think if we get to the place where we think we're the only ones that are concerned about it, then that is not true at all. So I want to show you this evening, and one of the things I'm going to create after I do the next podcast, I'm going to create a chart of all the resources that I think are really valuable because they give a true perspective of what's happening. Now, I've introduced this tonight of the power of truth and resistance. And I'll admit I feel very grateful for the significant resistance that I've been reading on and looking at in articles. And they're demanding that Trump and Musk face the reality that a lot of American voters did not vote for the agenda that they're carrying out. Don't believe the drama that you saw in Trump's first speech. It is massive lies, and I'm going to provide you some media fact checking that I think will help you know the truth. And it's always interesting how the media resists, and what they're doing in all the writings is they are resisting Trump and Musk and the Republicans and holding them accountable for what they are doing by publishing and making clear to all of us what is happening. Now, this podcast is about organizations that are resisting Trump and Musk and the Republican-controlled Congress by publishing their actions or taking legal actions to hold them to what they're doing and ask them to be responsible for it. First, I want to, though, list some of the actions they're taking that I know are dangerous and they're disastrous in many ways. For an example, FEMA has lost hundreds of employees, so that means a clear message to you and me. This will affect all of us when disasters occur, and it's already affecting people throughout our country who are struggling to prepare for disasters or rebuild from a disaster. The New York Times on March 5th, 2025, is a wonderful article that talks about Trump's officials take down list of federal property for sale, or possible for sale. They have to take it down because they put it up on the agency web page, and they found that there were inaccuracies in it, and so they've put back up, well, it's coming soon. The truth of it is, this list swiftly came under criticism by Democratic lawmakers since some form of federal officials told them about what was happening and said, we need to be very concerned about the government services across the country. Now, I've been in the mental health business 48 years. And of course, I know that we have an insane cabinet member that was chosen by Trump that has no medical status. He has no medical background. And most of it is his conspiracy theories and some research that he thinks he's carried out. I live in Texas, so in West Texas and New Mexico, we're having deaths due to the fear and conspiracy theories that he and others have put out about getting measles vaccines or any other kind of vaccine. Now, thank goodness in Houston and in Harris County, we're a Democratic county. So what's happening in Houston is there are loads of organizations in Harris County that are opening up their doors on March 15th to offer free vaccinations for adults and children that have no insurance or have Medicaid or CHIP. Now, that's the kind of people we are. Unfortunately, our state government is controlled by mega Republicans. So they've decided to reopen a Texas detention center for migrant families that they find. And I know what the impact was psychologically on those children that were imprisoned last time Trump did this. It's really demoralizing and crazy to take this kind of action. And some private concern is going to make a lot of money off of doing that. And Musk Dodge are attempting to target child support databases full of income data. This data was not provided by civil servants who took a stand and said it was too sensitive in government records. People who have held these positions say this is private and confidential data, including social security numbers and earnings of every person in this country. We need to speak out and demand that this kind of thing is not done. Dodge is also attempting to get information on Social Security Administration. The SSA has wage data and other information on their server. Now, the New York Times has a fascinating article about Republicans face angry voters at town halls, hitting a broad backlash. Some came with complaints about Elon Musk and President Trump's new billionaire friend who's carrying out an assault, as they said, on the federal bureaucracy. Others demanded guarantees that the Republicans in Congress would stop raiding the social safety net, and others chided the GOP to push back against Trump's moves to trample the constitutional power of Congress. Thank goodness. And Republicans are standing up and saying something now, or independents who voted for him. It appears that the brief honeymoon period that Mr. Trump and Republicans had started, the voters are beginning to digest the effects of their agenda, and it's not acceptable to them. And due to angry comments, it's fascinating that the cowardly Republicans generally held fewer in-person open town halls than the Democrats did, their counterparts, opting instead for more controlled environments such as telephone town halls that minimize the risk of them being confronted. Now, there's the reality. There were 26 claims of false, misleading, and absurd statements by Trump in his lengthy speech that would have tired anyone. If you want to know the truth, then you can read the statement he has made and then get the truth from the Washington Post. And it's a fact-checking 26 suspect claims in Trump's address to the Congress. And you know me, I will provide you these references at the end of my podcast. And so you'll have an opportunity to see what these are and go out and read them, because I'm really glad I read all of them. Because now if a Trump supporter says anything to me, I can counter with the factual data and the fact that none of these statements are true. I want you to realize, too, that Trump's purging the Pentagon is a move to establish an authoritarian control of the U.S. government. Please realize that Trump's pursuit of total power is done by capturing the intelligence services, the Justice Department, the FBI, and the Pentagon. Trump will put his loyalists in charge and build a military that can crush any resistance, and will certainly be loyal to him and not our Constitution. So stop living in not reading and read legitimate news so you can understand what's going on. And that's the reason I read news every day. The next thing I want to talk about is the actions that have occurred that have stopped Trump and Musk. In the New York Times on March 6th, there's an article about the judge blocks Trump's funding freeze, saying White House put itself above the Congress. Thank God there are judges that are now standing up and saying, wake up, Congress. He's putting himself above you. The ruling extended an order barring the Trump administration from withholding the billions in congressionally approved funds to the states. The judge said that the lawsuit came down to a case of executive overreach. Thank God somebody's naming this. The Washington Post has an article out that makes it clear that the Supreme Court says the judge can force Trump's administration to pay foreign aid. If you want to realize the heartbreaking stories and things that Trump is creating with his freezing of foreign aid, then Time magazine has an excellent article, Inside the Chaos, Confusion, and Heartbreak of Trump's Foreign Aid Freeze. Please know something. Foreign aid is a third leg of our national security. And I want you will hear in a moment about Public Citizen, which is an organization that is one that filed this claim, this suit, with, and they've worked with some other lawyers to have this suit filed, because there are two different issues with it. I feel pleased, too, that a judge has told Trump that he can't illegally fire the head of the National Labor Relations Board, and the members cannot be fired in order that that the woman that is head of that is stay in her role. This agency oversees relations among workers, labor unions, and employees. See, what he's trying to do to destroy any organizations that could oversee or prevent some of his corrupt actions from happening, or from Musk's corrupt actions. Realize that Trump and the mega Republicans' major agenda is to gain power for white people. Listen to the dismissals in the armed forces and see the generals that are being removed that are persons of color, and they're all being replaced with white men. Now, let me talk to you about the organizations, and I will go into more detail in another podcast as well. They're taking a stand against President Trump, Elon Musk, and the Republican-led Congress that are doing nothing to manage what Trump and Musk are doing. One of them that I really appreciate and read constantly is Public Citizen. And you will receive their newsletter information so you can get on that list. Because what they are doing is to fight Trump and Musk in the courts. And it's inspiring, and they are winning in some of them. And they're pursuing some. If they don't win the first round, they keep pursuing them. They're a nonprofit consumer advocacy organization that champions public interest, and that means yours and my interest in the halls of power. They defend the democracy, they resist corporate power, and they fight to ensure that the government works for the people, like you and me, not big corporations. They were founded in 1971. They have over 500,000 members and supporters throughout the country. They have made it very clear that American democracy is in jeopardy from the disastrous Citizens United ruling that flooded our politics with corporate cash to immoral assaults on voting rights. It's the reason Musk to buy the presidency with all the money he spent. And this organization, Public Citizens, works every day to defend against these threats and advance bold reforms. So let me give you a concise list of the court actions they're in. And they have a newsletter as well, which I will put you the information in with the other references, because they will describe continually what they're doing in these various court cases. They have 7 lawsuits against what they call the regime of Donald Trump. The first lawsuit was filed in moments that Trump was sworn in. Lawsuit 1 is about Elon Musk Dodge operating unlawfully. They filed that on January 20th. They filed a lawsuit challenging the so-called Department of Government Efficiency. And they claim that they are operating in secrecy and a violation of the Federal Advisory Committee Act. Shortly after they filed this suit, 2 similar cases were filed and then consolidated with theirs, because they are maximizing their resources. Now, they've decided to dismiss their case, but they're supporting the other lawyers that are fighting this particular lawsuit. The second lawsuit they did was Dodge's invading the U.S. Treasury Department. So on February 3rd, following the news that Dodge gang had tried to infiltrate a payment system at the U.S. Treasury Department, they filed a lawsuit demanding an immediate halt to the illegal invasion of the privacy of millions of Americans whose information is in that system. Then on the 6th, the judge issued an order restricting 2 Musk-connected men already housed at Treasury from modifying or copying the database, prohibiting them from giving any information to Musk or anyone outside of the Treasury Department. And so they have prevented, this judge has helped to prevent, with the lawsuits that have been filed by public citizen, to prevent our sensitive Treasury data to be given out. Now, this one is it's going to take a long time to process, but they're in their next step that they are naming is requesting a longer lasting preliminary injunction against Trump and Musk. Lawsuit 3 is about public health agency websites that were censored. And I've talked about this a little bit in another podcast. On the first day in office, Trump issued an executive order that required federal agencies to use the term sex and not gender in all federal documents. So the agencies were very confused, such as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Food and Drug Administration. So they removed their websites. And with that data set and the web pages they removed, doctors and researchers who use that data every day to diagnose and treat patients and monitor disease and advance public health were at a loss. So the citizens, public lawyers filed a lawsuit challenging removal of this vital health information. And on February 6th, they moved for a temporary restraining order. The judge granted a motion and ordered the agencies to restore the deleted web pages and data sets while the litigation proceeds. And they have even amended their complaint because there's some problems for the city and county of San Francisco. Now they're preparing a summary judgment motion asking the courts to enter a final order in their favor. In a fit of authoritarian desperation, Elon Musk has called for the judge in this case to be impeached, at the risk of stating, obviously, there is no way that this judge can be impeached. It just shows how ignorant he is. Lawsuit 4 is about the U.S. aid shutdown, which ignited a worldwide humanitarian crisis. when they shut down and ordered that U.S. aid workers stop doing their jobs and terminating contracts and freezing grants, it put the U.S. aids in disarray, especially medical care, food assistance, and other critical projects across the globe that were operating. All this money has been approved by the Congress. They're pissed off it's been approved by the previous Congress, but it's still approved. And so there's no reason to stop it, except Trump wants to play one of his games, power games. February 6th, the public citizens filed a lawsuit in federal court to reverse Trump's attempt to dismantle the U.S. aids. They asked the court for a temporary restraining order, and that night the judge issued an order blocking the plan to put 2,200 U.S. aids workers on leave, and they brought back hundreds that were to have been eliminated as well. Now, the judge extended this order, and the judge since has lifted the restraining order, but they will soon, the public citizen will soon be briefing a motion for summary judgment, asking the judge to issue a final order restoring U.S. aids. The fifth lawsuit is Dodge invades the U.S. Department of Education. In an additional way to try to infiltrate a sensitive database at the Treasury Department, Dodge has access confidential information at other agencies as well, including the Department of Education. So on February 7th, the public citizen filed a lawsuit in federal court to block Dodge access to the Department of Education database, which gives financial information of thousands of students' loans, applicants, and their families. And on the 14th, the judge held an hour-long hearing on our motion for a temporary restraining order. And on the 17th, the judge declined to issue a temporary restraining order, but they are still continuing this case and pursuing it in the courts. It hasn't been lost. It just has to continue to be fought. Trump's unconstitutional foreign aid freeze, I've already talked about with the New York Times and the Washington Post articles a few minutes ago. Lawsuit 7 is illegal dismantling of Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Now, you have to realize something. After the Wall Street's reckless greed set off in a worldwide financial crisis in 2008, Congress passed a law creating the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, to safeguard the American people and our economy from the big banks and other giant financial institutions. On January 31st, the Trump administration began taking steps to dismantle the CFPB. But the public citizens lawyers sued to halt that effort. The next day, they filed a motion for temporary restraining order. Later that day, the judge entered an order blocking any destruction of records, firing of people, or transfer of agency funding while she considers the case. They continue to argue that in the preliminary injunction in halting the dismantling. So they have got a temporary injunction. This case is continuing. Understand something. There are plenty of articles now out about Trump and Musk threatening the Post Office and the Social Security Administration. In a newsletter on February 17th, How to Celebrate President's Day, it's one of the best articles I've ever read. It's about what President's Day is about, and it was written by the Public Citizens organization. And here's a comment that I think is really important to hear. President's Day originated to honor our nation's first commander-in-chief, George Washington, and others who have led these United States through thick and thin, through times of peace and times of war, through our greatest collective triumphs and our deepest national tragedies. For all their strengths and weaknesses, none of these presidents, not a single one, did anything remotely like what our current president, Donald Trump, is attempting to do. And so that's the reason they're going after him. Another group you need to know about is the National Democratic Redistricting Committee, the NDRC. Eric Holder is head of that organization. Now, Holder is a recognized leader in legal issues and a staunch supporter of civil rights. He served in the Obama administration as the 82nd Attorney General of the United States from February 2009 to April 2015. He is the longest serving Attorney General in U.S. history, or the third longest serving Attorney General in U.S. history, and the first African American to hold that position. Under his leadership and his civil rights and commitment to voting rights, he made them a top priority of the Justice Department. Now, Holder is a real defender of voting rights. And he is a big enforcer of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which, of course, Trump's Supreme Court has limited it. But he is politically motivated to have voter ID laws that are designed to suppress minorities and youth in voting to be eliminated. And he makes constant efforts to overturn these laws around the country. He wants all of us that are qualified to be able to vote. Now, to get information on NDRC, you need to receive their newsletter, and I will give you their information as well. They are doing the work to fight for our democracy in 2026, 2028, and beyond. I don't know if you've heard, the newest thing is that Trump has said he is not going to accept any election results in 2026 because they're going to all be false. So he's doing the same thing again. Now, this organization they're doing a number of things. First, they're another group that have court cases that they are fighting in 9 different congressional districts about gerrymandering to make sure that voters are fairly represented. They have 2 going on right now in Louisiana and Arizona, where lawmakers are trying to ram through bills that would jeopardize fair maps, fair representation, and fair distribution of resources around the state. The one in Louisiana particularly is about a new electoral map that they're attempting to do to lead to congressional representation that's fair. Now, another newsletter from this committee is on March 5th, they're attacking, they know that Trump is attacking the census that will be coming up. And so the U.S. Census is being attacked, and Holder says this is a 3-alarm fire because this is how they will be able to gerrymander and continue to control voting to the point that he can maybe live out his promise that Republicans will never have to vote again because they're always going to win. Now, here are some things he says about it. Number one, hours into Trump's second term, he repealed an order that affirmed how everyone in the United States should be counted in the U.S. Senate, because he's on a tirade about immigrants, whether they're citizens now or not. So Trump's actions on the census could lead to a blatant attempt to undercount communities with higher proportions of immigrants and undocumented people. Number two is that Republican state attorney generals also have sued to stop the 2030 census form counting all U.S. residents. And the federal judge presiding over this case is a Trump appointee with a track record for upholding gerrymandered maps. Third thing is, in recent weeks, that massive Census Bureau data files that are normally publicly available have disappeared from the website. Now, some of these files have been put back up, but as Holder says, we're not sure that it has all the information, and it's a grave concern. So what they're doing is they're using their mapping analytic team to put together all the census data that they have and to make certain to track what's going on with the Census Bureau. Other thing that's happening in Wisconsin, there's a need to replace Justice Bradley, who is retiring after 30 years serving on the bench. This court in Wisconsin has been pro-democratic, and Judge Susan Crawford has prevented attacks on the right to have abortion in this state and has protected voter rights. Now, Susan Crawford is a Democratic defender. It's the best way to describe her. Musk has decided to use some of his billions to buy the race for another man who supports the state's extreme 1894 abortion ban, supports gerrymandering, and sued to overturn the Affordable Care Act. So the reason I'm asking you to write and get on their list is all of these are worthy organizations for you to support and give money to. They're the ones that I know are helping us. In North Carolina, there's a ridiculous battle that's been going on that has stopped. The Republicans are trying to stop the overturning of the state Supreme Court and an election. They're trying to eliminate an election that happened. Griffin is the Republican candidate, but he lost the election in 2024 to incumbent Justice Allison Riggs. She won with 60,000 legally cast ballots. It's been counted, I don't know how many times. The state court has ruled that Riggs has won, and yet Griffin still continues to hold his position. And he's told people the reason he ran at all was because he wants to protect future partisan gerrymandering in the state of Wisconsin. This case has not been resolved yet. It's been going on for months since the 2024 election. And I will also give you the email address for this organization because it is protecting against voters being eliminated who have the right to vote. One of the newsletters I truly appreciate as well is the Conversations. They write and stand for democracy and truth. They have academic experts who write their articles, and they're published on multiplicity of things: ethics, science, technology, politics, society, environment, energy, education, economy, and business. So in this one newsletter, you can get a lot of really good information over many different aspects of our society. They wrote up the reasons that Ukraine united behind Zelensky after the fight with Trump. The statements about the stance that the Ukrainians have taken is very courageous, and it's a worthwhile thing to read. It's an excellent resource that you can combine with the others I'm naming to you. Another group that I think are really important is the 314 Action Fund, which stands firmly against Musk and Trump and Kennedy, because this is the one that focuses on health a lot, because they try to get well-educated health professionals to run for office. But basically, they focus on recruiting and training and electing Democratic scientists to go into public office. Their grassroots network, made up of millions of engaged supporters in every part of the country. 314 Action has established itself as a trusted partner to candidates and Democratic organizations alike, connecting and working with allied organizations, PACs, and members of Congress. Here's what their stand is and what they're doing. They are supporting Dr. Amy Acton to be the next governor of Ohio. She got into Ohio through COVID-19 when she was the director of the Department of Health in Ohio. A mega billionaire is running for governor against her. And he's already shown that he doesn't care what happens. He's going to try to win, and all of it will be at the expense of the people in Ohio. A second example I'll give you of the 314 side is the U.S. representative for New Mexico's 1st District, Madeleine Stansberry, was featured in the 319 Action Fund newsletter. She said, "I joined a group of my fellow lawmakers and walked out of Donald Trump's joint address to Congress. What's happening in Washington is alarming. We shouldn't act like this is normal, because it is not." She made it clear that it will take all of us to stop Donald Trump and Elon Musk from dismantling our government from inside out. She goes on to say in a newsletter, "As a ranking member of the Dodge subcommittee, I've witnessed firsthand the havoc wreaked by Donald Trump and Elon Musk on the very foundation of how our government functions. When I and nearly 24 other members of the House Oversight Committee were denied entry into the Treasury Department after they tried to investigate what Musk was doing with the private data of hundreds of millions of Americans," she says, "I was terrified for the future of our democracy. That's why I introduced the Nobody Elected Elon Musk Act to hold Elon Musk accountable for his actions and attacks on the federal government." Another thing this group is doing is they publish the real amount of money that Musk makes from the federal government yearly, which is $40 billion. So he obviously has a very significant conflict of interest in serving in any capacity in the federal government. Elon Musk companies received $3.7 billion in federal contracts in 2024 and received more than $38 billion in federal funding. None of Musk's federal contracts have been cut. None of Musk's federal contracts have been cut. Dodge fired thousands of federal workers investigating Musk businesses, all 3 of them: Neuralink, Tesla, and Starlink. They also learned that Musk is set to receive $2.4 billion in contracts to completely take over the Federal Aviation Administration's communication systems from a competitor of his, and the Trump administration directed staff to locate tens of millions of dollars for this deal. And if you don't think this government is corrupt, then I don't know what else. I mean, there's tremendous evidence how corrupt they are. The fourth thing that I would mention from this group is you need to hear about the doctors and the healthcare professionals and the many STEM professionals that have been elected to political office. And I think we need to face the truth. As they say, the unelected Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, have no medical training or schooling, are now making life and death decisions about every aspect of our health care system. The House Republicans have voted to, and remember, Musk has a chainsaw that he shows in a dramatic thing he did on dramatic thing he did. But anyway, the House Republicans voted to a chainsaw to Medicaid in what is the largest cut to public health insurance program in American history. I've already told you what Trump has done and the disaster he's created when we're not a member of the World Health Organization. So the health and well-being of Americans are being threatened. And if you think it's not going to affect you, then you're sadly mistaken. Now, another group that's working very hard is the Democratic Party congressional representatives. And I told you about Lizzie Fletcher, who's my congresswoman that stands for democracy, and I quoted her in the last podcast. There are Democrats all over this country that are standing and saying enough. Even Republicans are now questioning what's going on. And I have an excellent article about Republicans and their buyer's remorse since they voted for Trump. They're saying they did not vote for the actions that he and Musk are taking. Now, I want to end this podcast with some statements from Senator Slotkin from Michigan, who delivered the Democratic Party's response to President Donald Trump's address to the joint session of Congress. She says, and this article says, in Democratic response to Trump, Slotkin says Reagan must be rolling over in his grave. Slotkin was smart since she started with her national security credentials before harshly criticizing the president's foreign policy approach. She is a former CIA analyst who served in the Defense Department under President George W. Bush and Barack Obama. Repeatedly scrutinizing Trump's handling of the Russian war on Ukraine, saying he would have lost us the Cold War. He would have lost us the Cold War. She's talking about Trump. Here are other comments. President Trump lives to say peace through strength. That's actually a line he stole from Ronald Reagan. That's the reason she said probably Ronald Reagan is rolling in his grave. The Trump explosive Oval Office meeting with Zelensky, she said, that scene in the Oval Office wasn't just a bad episode of reality TV. It sums up Trump's whole approach to the world. Trump says he believes in cozying up to dictators like Putin and kicking our friends like the Canadians in the teeth. He sees American leadership as merely a series of real estate transactions. Trump's actions suggest that in his heart, he doesn't believe we're an exceptional nation. She emphasizes that American security, prosperity, and democracy are at risk. She also has stated in this article, and she did this when she announced her perception of what Trump had talked about and done. It's at risk when the president decides you can pick and choose what rules you want to follow, when he ignores court orders and the Constitution itself, and when elected officials stand by and just let it happen, she said. But it's at risk when the president pits Americans against each other, when he demonizes those who are different and tells certain people they shouldn't be included. In addition to her criticism of Trump, she also criticized Elon Musk. Is there anyone in America, she says, who is comfortable with him and his gang of 20-year-olds using their own computer servers to poke through your tax returns, your health information, and your bank accounts. There is no oversight, no protection against cyber attack. There's no guardrails on what they do with your private data. Slotkin has positioned herself as a moderate Democrat, championing abortion rights, wants bans on assault weapons, lowering of prescription drugs, and pushing for economic opportunities for the middle class. She is a Democratic moderate voice that everyone wants to hear. I guarantee you will know it about her. In my next podcast, I'm going to give you more organizations and people that are out there fighting for our democracy and the rule of law. This is my way of showing you that we are not alone. I will, after another podcast, again, give you the resources that you need to have so you can hear the voices that support our Constitution, stand for values, and uphold the rights for all citizens of the United States to vote. I want to conclude this podcast with these statements. The dangerous actions of Trump, Musk, and the Republican-controlled Congress are not going unnoticed. Across the country, individuals, organizations, and media outlets are exposing the lies, fighting back against corruption, and demanding accountability. It is up to us to stay informed, speak out, and support those who are standing up for the truth and democracy. That's the reason I'm asking you to find $10 and give to each of these organizations if that's all you can do. We cannot afford to look away. Our future depends on our vigilance and resistance. Thank you for listening.